everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Tonight I'd like to introduce my wife Paprika Clark, who's been helping me do my videos, and Terry Krasko with the Mendocino National Forest Public Information Officer. Is that your title? Forgive me, as I probably shouldn't have answered that part.
It is. That's correct. I'm a public information officer.
Okay, well, I greatly appreciate you taking the time to come on and help us out with some of these questions, because we do our best to try and stay informed, but sometimes some questions slip through the cracks. Anyway, to take care of a couple things real quick before we start the show, as of 1 p.m. today, 356,312 acres have burned. The forest itself is 913,306 acres. That puts us at 39% burned this season alone. Now, I know that fire is a necessary part of ecology and a necessary thing that needs to happen, but it still breaks my heart to see it happen. To know that I go back to these spots and they're not going to look the same in my lifetime, which I understand is part of the life cycle, I got to admit, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to shed a tear. So, with that out of the way. So Terry's going to join us to go over some questions. Pepper's going to help monitor the chat. After that, I'm going to go over the different closure orders, the closure map, because they are separate things, and help define why there are two, and we'll go over those later on. I have a few websites I'd love to show off, like Windy, and Cal Topo, so you can follow different the wind directions, hot spots, burn areas, so on and so forth. A lot of those are already in the description. The description for this show has countless links. If you need the information, it is likely down inside there. I highly recommend you check that out at some point. So without further ado, Terry, thank you again for joining us. My first question, best we know, these fires were started by lightning, correct? The August complex fire as a whole?
That is correct. It was my understanding there were, inside of our complex area, there were 37 lightning strikes. A lot of them, when we first got here, they were showing like a tenth of an acre, and they were out. They were really nailed by initial attack, but unfortunately, some of them began to grow over that time, and some of them just couldn't get to it at a point where they could stop it from initial attack. So I'm thinking right now, they're probably independently, there's probably roughly 8 fires in the complex, but most of the smaller ones are out. And I don't know if they've called them controlled contained, probably, but obviously the big one that we're dealing with right now is the doe. And for the moment, we do have the Hopkins fire, and that is going to change over to another team tomorrow. So we know that is going to change, and I don't know exactly who the particulars are for that yet, so we'll find out. But the doe fire has probably absorbed the biggest portion of those fires right now, and they no longer exist as individual entities. They're all part of the big thing right now.
Yeah, last I looked at the map, it was one big red area. And so how many fires are now? So it was the doe fire was one big one, but then it met up with the whole fire and at least one more. Is that correct?
The Tehama fire.
Okay.
And oh, now you're making me do history here. There was another one to the north that got absorbed too, and I don't remember what the name of it was. So there was 2 on the north that were pretty big. They just joined them up, and we kind of looked at that from the beginning, knew that they would join, and we were working on containment lines just to crunch all that together as we were trying to build on the north part of that whole fire complex. So yeah, there were like 3 big fires that comprise the doe right now, and lots of tiny ones that were absorbed in there as well.
Yeah, it's one big massive area. Again, I mean, we're talking roughly 39%. That's a lot.
Now, just to clarify that just a little bit, and this would be a GIS exercise. Remember that fire has a gross acreage, but not all of that is Mendocino National Forest. There is some private and corporate lands mixed in there with it, and I think there's some state sections as well. So when we talk about the big picture of what the Mendocino National Forest is, their actual acreage, we could tease that out, but that's a mathematical exercise. Nonetheless, it does represent a very large portion of the Mendocino National Forest. whether it's just that exact percentage, it remains a little bit debatable because there are private lands mixed in there too.
Well, that's good to know. I don't know if there's any chance you can talk a little louder. People are having a little hard time hearing you, apparently. Um,
Let me. Can you hear that better now?
I can hear you fine, but I have the stereo I can crank up. We can't hear anything he's saying. I can't either. Apparently, they can't hear you.
Oh no.
Hmm.
Uh-oh. Now let's try that. A little better. Try that again, Terry.
1, 2, 3. Are we catching everybody now?
I sure hope so. Technical. Oh, it's always something fun with this OBS. So,
Okay.
but X Country Adventures said that they could hear. So he's just low volume. So we can't really hear him.
Yes.
So I turned up the volume a little bit more. Let's see what happens. We'll go with it. It's still faint. So if you, I don't know if you have any earbuds, that might help too.
All right, hang on. I'll try that. I do have some. It does have a better mic. Maybe it'll help.
There, now hopefully that should work out a little better. Let's see what happens. It's good.
Is that better?
Yeah, but I'm hearing slight echo. I'm not sure why. So anyway, moving on to the next question. Why is it important for the public to stay away from these closed areas?
Well, frankly, it's dangerous for even experienced firefighters to be inside of that environment. At this point in time, even when the area has been cooled off, there's a lot of trees inside of that perimeter that have damaged root systems at this point. So we call those things widowmakers in the firefighter industry. They become snags very soon, and with minor amount of winds, they can come crashing down. And we had a lot of wind today, and I know that there was a lot of those probably that came down. So that's just primarily the biggest reason, other than the fact that we don't want anybody in the fire. That's obvious to most folks. It is a dangerous environment, and with things still not secured out there, you don't know exactly where you're at. So other than we have sophisticated ways of detection right now, either with aircraft or
Terry,
infrared.
There's something going on with your end. Apparently, you're better off without the earbuds. The chat is flying
Yeah.
through. Better without the earbuds.
Yes,
That's
that's the
the hard
consensus
part
I'm
with this
getting.
audio is getting it just right. So
I'll get closer to the phone. How's that?
let's give it a try.
Okay.
So again, you were talking about why it's good to stay out of it, why it's good for everybody to stay out.
So I was talking about the snag potential that's out there. When the fire moves through, it weakens root systems on the trees, and some of the roots can get severely burned. And in the firefighter jargon of the industry, we call those widowmakers. Get into a windy situation, and those things can come crashing down at any time. It's a very dangerous environment, other than the fact that there's still heat out there.
So if we don't understand the closure area boundaries, what's a hotline or website we can refer to? I do have a few of my own in the description, just to let people know, but I'd be curious what you think. Terry?
I'm thinking of the closure order itself. I cannot scrape it out of my head verbatim. I know right now they have closures on all campgrounds and day use areas. You're aware of that. And there is a region-wide, and then we're talking about all of California national forests, to no longer allow any kind of campfires. And I believe that includes anything that makes a flame at this point. I don't know, it seems to be a very extreme measure, but we have a lot of people coming in, and when you have activity anywhere, even if someone pulls off to the side of the road and parks in the grass, it's a possibility to start a fire, because grass could be touching their catalytic converter. And believe me, they've started a number of fires just in doing that. It's an extreme situation, is about the way I could put it.
Yeah, I've heard that. studied to be an auto mechanic 20 plus years ago. And I didn't realize how hot that catalytic converter is actually significantly hotter than the engine itself. You may think it's 180 or 210 degrees, which is, it's hot. The catalytic converter is far hotter, especially if you just did a nice big hill climb trying to get into some campsite or something. You get to the top of this big dry grass field. No, please. So what about homeowners? What's a good source of information for them?
You're talking about just being safe out with their homes or going into the national forest. We're talking about what they can do to build defensible space. Is that your question?
I'm asking, like, so I noticed a lot of questions in Facebook about people asking about their structures that are within the Mendocino National Forest. How do those people find out if their stuff has burned?
Okay, well, some of those we know directly because we worked the structures and we burned out around them. Now, since this fire has moved in areas, we haven't even gone all the way into this so far. Now, there's places now that we have not investigated. There was structure protection started on some of those sites. Some we didn't have any time to do it. And we probably are not going to know for probably a few days. We've ordered structure protection teams to come out and help us with that. They specialize in that. And some of the roads may be just severely clogged at this point from deadfall, snags, boulder rollouts and stuff like that. So it may be days before we know exactly what has occurred. Now, we've been tracking with a number of folks through our community meetings, and the forest supervisor has been very gracious. She has been fielding calls from homeowners or cabin owners out there and keeping tabs with that. So you can actually call into the forest supervisor's office and request it. However, in the areas where it is just very, very recent burn, they're probably not going to be able to answer the question until crews actually get in there. It's going to take some time.
Yeah, I did notice on the burn map that it looks like it went around a few things. I guess that would be something to do with the fuel loads and whatnot and the wind directions. But it was kind of strange that massive areas of burn and there's this little pocket that on the burn map doesn't have anything burned at all. So speaking of burn maps, I've been really curious, and I've seen other people ask before, is there any way to see some sort of like overlay of like day to day on the maps, like as the fire progression? I know our fire here, the Walbridge fire, one night it only burned 1,000 acres, whereas the first night it burned real quick. So it'd just be interesting. Is there a way to track its growth?
I would have to look on that, Dylan. I believe on InstaWeb we have been posting progression maps. So there are dates with colors showing when the fire grew to this area. And I believe if you look on InstaWeb, you might find those out there.
But is there a way to actually, you were going to try and check that out later and get back to me, but I was just curious if there was a way to overlay, because I could have them on 2 different tabs, so it's just, different layers. So my next question, what's been the priority? Would it be containment or protecting structures? I know there's not a lot of structures, but there are some.
Yes, of course, we're always, property that's, established, structures, homes, businesses, cabins that are out there, we're always doing point protection first. And I can't say that it takes priority the highest or less, because we've been working on containment lines all along. Now, with this big wind event here, some of the lines we're just getting intel on that some of those lines have been compromised. And other places we knew the fire would grow and would stop at certain places, but we have a lot of scouting to do in the next couple of days here. And I'm hoping tonight that we'll have infrared flights over the forest that will show where the fire has progressed, where there are spots that have gone obviously way out of where we thought they would go. And we'll be able to tell that. That's the only way that we're really knowing how big the fire is at this point, is using infrared mapping.
Will we be able to see any of that imaging?
I think so. We do put some of those maps up on InstaWeb.
The infrared though, because that'd be kind of neat. I've never seen that. I mean, we have a thermal imaging drone, but you can only go so high before the detail starts to fall out. I'd imagine what you're using is far superior.
There are actually several ways that we get it. One of them, of course, many people have heard of MODIS, and I don't ask me what that acronym is, but it's satellite-based uh, infrared mapping. And then there is a aircraft that flies over actually several national forests every night, and they might fly the entire state of California. They're constantly sending the data back over to infrared interpreters, and usually by early morning hours, and these people work throughout the night. By early morning, they get the maps out to the incident bases so that they can have their morning briefing and they know where the fire has progressed. There's another one that is a smaller version of infrared, but it actually is able to use in the daytime, and it's called distributive real-time infrared, and we that's DRTI, and we call them the dirty birds. They are a drone. Yeah, that's exactly what we call them, is dirty birds. It is a drone-based thing, and it's on loan from the Department of Defense to the Forest Service to map these areas in the daytime. It's a different kind of infrared, and it's very effective. It takes a smaller shot, though, and they are drone-based, and that reduces any possibility of a pilot getting into bad things over a fire, too. So that's another plus.
Yeah, the drones definitely have their advantage. I know there's some disadvantages too, but in the right hands, they can be extremely valuable. The eyes in the sky, so to speak, and
Yes.
there's no loss of life. If it crashes, there's just loss of a lot of money. um, so. One thing I've been really curious about is why was there a shift in command? We hear that people from other regions are now running the show, basically. Just out of curiosity, why? What's the advantage to having somebody out of town versus somebody local?
Well, it's not really an advantage. Um, and I think this might roll into one of your questions about what are IMTs. Uh, IMT stands for Incident Management Team.
Okay.
So nationally, we have 16 Type 1 incident management teams. There are two of them in the southern states. There's a red team and a blue team, and obviously the blue team is the one that's here on this fire complex. They hold the same qualifications as any of the Type 1 teams, incident management teams in California. They're trained the same way. They have the same kind of sophistication on fuel modeling, tactics. And one of the things that I'd like to point out too is that when we show up in town, there's always a question, what do these people from out of town know? Well, number one, we do not ignore the local fire people here. They become our people. And we take a lot of cues from the forest itself here, and they have their own experts. So we're always walking hand in hand with the local fire experts. And that also comes from state and county officials. So we're working with everybody in this process. The thing that is with the Type 1 teams, it allows for a greater amount of particularly logistical and operational support. It's able to handle extremely complex and large scale operations. We have the ability to work with hundreds and thousands of people, millions of dollars worth of heavy iron out there, engines, aircraft, retardant tankers, helicopters. That all that expertise resides on a Type 1 team, and they're able to manage an extremely complex situation. So the team that comes from the South has the same qualifications as those that are from California. And I'd like to point out something else that's kind of unique about this. When we need help in other parts of the country, it's sometimes when we have more than what we can handle in the South, we have a team that comes in from Montana, sometimes California, and other parts of the Rocky Mountains, Northwest. So they come help all across the country if the need arrives. And I mean, that's Americans. That's the way we do business. We take care of everybody around the country, and we share the resources. So the team actually is very well qualified. I could speak for myself. I worked on fires in 34 states. So I've seen a lot of the country and been to California a number of times on fires that were as complex or
maybe even a little bit more complex as some of the stuff that's going on right here, if you can imagine that. Uh, my last 2 weeks of my permanent employment with the Forest Service, I spent in the Thomas Fire near Ventura in 2018. So we bring the experience. Our operations people have seen all the types of fuels, and so it's not new to us. Plus, like I say, we work with the local fire officials here, so we have a pretty good handshake over what goes on. It just so happens that the California teams have been, I mean, look at the amount of circumstances that are going on right now. That Creek Fire, they have 2 Type 1 teams handling that fire. That's the one that exploded down near Los Angeles. So California has 4 federal teams. So obviously they need more help. And there's going to be people from the Rocky Mountains and from the Great Basin coming in to help California. And in the future, you probably will see California teams helping somewhere in Montana or other places of the country. That's the way we roll.
Sorry, was looking at some of the chat stuff here.
That makes a lot of sense. We have some very good questions coming from some people in the chat feed. A couple of them are about specific locations, not necessarily people's homes or their streets, but certain regions. So we may have to either circle back to that or just kind of put those on hold, understanding your position with regard to the quickly changing circumstances. That's up to you.
And we're broadcasting from my car, so I don't have maps to get real specific.
Yeah.
I have some maps, several maps I'm going to be going over later in this show. And then again, the closures and whatnot. So hopefully I can answer some of those questions, or at least show. As far as where the fire is going and heading, I would definitely check out I think it was released like 3 hours ago. I believe it was the fire incident chief released a press release where he goes over the map and where the fire's been going and predicted to go. That would be where I would steer for that information, of where the predicted fire is going to go. Who better to get it from than the person in charge, right?
And that has been John Wallace, and he is our operations section chief. And I know he's getting to be quite a celebrity here in California, but he is the talking voice of operations within our team, and he usually does 1 or 2 of those briefings a day. And you'll see where we're filming everything with a phone, and at first we start off the conversation, you could see his face, and then we bring the phone in close to where his fingers are pointing on the map, so that you can see the detail in there, and hopefully that's coming out good.
What I've been seeing from him, they've been getting a lot better with their camera work, a whole lot better. And it makes it really nice, because there's been a couple times I've seen videos uploaded, and it was like with the cell phone, there's too much movement, and it's getting a lot better, and it's perfect. It's fantastic. Obviously, it's working. So, where were we? Well, my next question was about drones, but you kind of already answered that one. Let's see, where were we? Are you using drones, and what are you using them for? But you kind of went over that. You're using them for. But one question I would have would be: do you use them at all to choreograph crews? Be able to find where the fire hotspots are and know where the crews are and the equipment is, to tell them, okay, a little more left or right? Because when you're over in, say, Willows, or are you at Stony Ford? I think you're in Stony Ford, right?
Right now, yes.
You're not up on the fire line, so could you use them to choreograph the crews better?
I believe that they have been, and not all drones are the same. Now the DRTI bird, the Dirty Bird, I believe that has a fairly long life on its engine and batteries for that to accomplish its mission. We are using some smaller ones to do recon work with, such as you suggest. And they are also coming up with some other ones that will actually have firing devices on them. So instead of using helicopters, we can use the drones to go over, and you're eliminating 1 human life, or 2 actually, in a helicopter to do firing operations. So there are a number of ways that they're becoming more and more popular, and they are FAA certified pilots to do all that maneuvering on those machines. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, to fly my little drone, I had to get an FAA Part 107 certificate, and it's just a little tiny thing. I can't imagine what it takes to get something to fly, so the permission to fly something like that, or the training. The Part 107 was a pain in the backside as it was. Um, so I hear about smoke jumpers, and they're getting into some of the remote areas. Is that what you do when you don't have a road that accesses a certain place?
Okay, so smoke jumpers are used for initial attack most of the time, and they are going to remote areas. I mean, it's obviously a fast insertion. If they get a smoke detected, a lot of it they use Doppler radar to find where the lightning strikes have occurred, and they do a plane recon, and they will insert smoke jumpers. And contrary to popular belief, the jumpers do not jump into the fire. They jump somewhere close to the fire. They take off their outer gear, and they look like anybody else on the fire line. They've got green and yellows on, put their hard hat on, go to work, and they usually anywhere from 3 to 5 at a time go in, and they will get those fires when they're small, keep them small, circle them, put them out. Sometimes they might sleep out there for a couple nights till the job is done. They're very self-contained, and I've heard these stories over the years. You know, you're supposed to be able to pack 120 pounds of gear out on your back, and some of them walk for 10, 15 miles, sometimes 20 miles with that gear to get back out. They don't always
Really?
get a ride out. Oh
That's
yeah, it's hard work.
that's so. When they're jumping out of a plane.
Of
Yes,
course,
with a hundred
yes.
and something pounds of stuff, and then hiking in.
Oh, some of them they drop by separate parachutes. I mean, they're going to drop with, you know, now they're not just dropping with a Pulaski and a shovel. They're going to drop in with water, food. They're going to have other supplies, firing equipment. So they may go in with fusees, maybe drip torches, and they use all those various types of equipment. And if they're going to run for several days, they're taking quite a bit. Of course, some of that will be consumed, but they will carry that stuff out. They have ways of packing it out, and they're kind of the elite of the elite when it comes to firefighting.
Wow. Yeah, I would say so. Um, so we're gonna take a break here for a moment, let's get one more question in here. Can you explain some of the limitations of air support, such as hours, visibility?
Okay, sure. I don't know exactly the number of hours that the helicopters can fly. And it's usually measured in time in the air, of course. And of course, they have to come down. Their missions are based on how much fuel they've got, how many hours they've been flying, fatigue. It is highly regulated, and there's people actually timing their sequences out there so that they know that how much time is actually spent in the air, so they don't overdo what they're supposed to do. Uh, you know, something that's flying 2,000 gallons of water times 8 pounds per gallon. Just think how much weight is coming over a fire. You can't afford to make mistakes.
No.
So there's a lot of what goes into that, and they want to make sure that they're doing the right thing, and they do manage by their fuel. They could carry more with less fuel, but less fuel means fewer minutes or hours that they have up in the air. So it's all regulated. They watch that extremely carefully.
Yeah, okay. So there's a whole lot of variables in that question. That sounds like another topic for another show. Before we break here, I'm seeing a lot of questions about what's going on with Covelo. Again, the easiest solution I would give you to find information is go to Facebook, Mendocino National Forest page, and then scroll down until you find a gentleman wearing a hat standing in front of a map with a burn zone, and he is very specific about places. Sometimes he even talks about properties. I would go check that out, and I believe it was a recent one was just posted about 2 hours ago. So if you want to know what direction the fire is going, or heading, or predicted to go, or what's burned or what's not burned, that'd be where I'd go. So with that said, we're gonna break real quick, and then chime back in, and we're gonna go